We've been married for 3 years, together for over 5. After a long academic journey, we're finally starting our careers and doing quite well. We recently bought our dream house, and we're enjoying this time together before we settle down and have kids in a few years. Our relationship felt like it would last forever, same values, same humor, same goals. We were experienced enough to know it wasn't just a fleeting romance but something real. We've always had a pretty open phone policy, casually sharing pictures or using each other's devices to look something up. So, when I learned about the hidden feature on iPhones that can hide photos, it sparked my curiosity. I'm not proud of it. But when he went to his swim training and left his phone at home, I gave in and took a look. What I found wasn't just shocking, it was devastating. I didn't expect to find anything major. Maybe some random old photos of his ex. But instead, I found a collection of photos and slow-motion videos he had taken of his former secretary. She's a 21-year-old girl, pretty attractive. He had recently switched jobs, and these pictures seemed to have been taken during the final weeks at his old office, almost like he knew he wouldn't see her again. They were focused on her legs, her heels, her backside, sometimes in slow motion. There were also profile pictures he had saved from her social media. But the worst part? There was a series of photos showing her wearing tight jeans, with what looked like fresh stains on them, something that resembled semen. He's always had a fetish for things like that, girls getting messy with sperm and or real life. It felt like I had just opened Pandora's box, and I haven't been able to think about anything else since. I haven't confronted him yet. He's not suspicious, though he's noticed I haven't been myself. When he asked what was wrong, I lied and blamed it on my period. It's not entirely untrue, but it's not the real reason I've been distant. I don't know how to handle this. Should I talk to him about it? Is this normal behavior, or have I stumbled onto something more sinister? It feels like a betrayal. But part of me wonders if I'm overreacting. After all, he doesn't have any contact with her anymore, other than work-related calls about unfinished projects. He always tells me when she reaches out. But still, how did he get those photos? Her social media is private, and they're not connected on any platforms. I can't shake the feeling that there's more I don't know. Maybe I should wait a few days and see if the folder gets updated, or check his other devices, which I've resisted so far. It feels like his privacy is already lost after what I've discovered. I'm angry that he put me in this situation, and angry at myself for not trusting him. Tomorrow, he'll be at work, and I'll be home with access to his other devices. I know it could backfire, but I need to know the truth. He forfeited his right to privacy the moment he started taking pictures of this young woman. I've met her a few times, and she seems like a sweet girl, which somehow makes it worse. I'm going to gather the evidence and confront him. I can't live with this uncertainty anymore. Right now, I'm sitting in front of his MacBook Pro, which is connected to his phone. He's at work and won't be back for another 4 hours. I'm completely lost. I've always used Windows, and I have no idea where to even begin. I know some of you might not want to be involved in this, but if anyone could guide me on where to look for photo streams or hidden folders, I'd really appreciate it. For those wondering how I'm doing, I didn't sleep much, and I feel utterly drained, with my heart racing nonstop. He's noticed, of course. He's been caring, like always, and I've kept up the excuse that it's just my period and a migraine. But deep down, I'm falling apart. I'm absolutely shocked and had to call my sister because it's too much for me to handle alone. Now, I'm sitting at her house, spending my first night away from him in years, and what I found left me sick to my core. The Photos app mirrored his phone, revealing a hidden folder with images I had already seen. But worse, there was an album named after her initials, filled with disturbing pictures and videos, him ejaculating into food containers and later photos of her eating from them, completely unaware. It's horrifying to even type this, but there were also images of him defiling her coffee and cookies, along with social media screenshots and recordings of her, despite them not being connected. I was in total shock and immediately called my sister, who rushed over. She saved me. I showed her everything, and she convinced me to grab an external hard drive so we could copy all of it. While she did that, I packed a bag for the next few nights. We left before he got home, leaving the laptop open with the album still displayed. 2 hours later, he started calling. Over and over, at least 100 times. My sister picked up once and told him in no uncertain terms to stop. He's been bombarding me with messages ever since, begging me to come home, pleading that we can fix this and that he needs my help. I haven't answered. Not one word. I've just been sitting here crying, feeling like the biggest fool for ever falling for a man like him. I don't know what to do next. I'm terrified of what's coming, of how to handle tomorrow or the days after. My life feels shattered, and I don't know where to turn. Part of me thinks I should contact her, but I'm unsure. He's a lawyer, and this city is his hometown. If this ever went public, his career would be over. He wouldn't recover, and I'm afraid I'd always be labeled as his woman, the poor wife. I decided it was time to confront him. There was no avoiding it, and even though I had no real hope that he could explain this away, it was a conversation that had to happen. Yesterday, we met at our house, a place that is as much mine as it is his. Beforehand, I let him know that my sister was aware of where I was and that she'd call me in about an hour to check if I was okay. I wasn't worried about violence, but better to be cautious. When I arrived, he seemed distant and cautious, watching my every move. I kept my composure, staying calm and detached. We sat down, and he just stared, saying nothing. Eventually, I broke the silence. I told him not to waste my time and to explain himself. He asked what I thought I had found, and I snapped, telling him I knew he was a sexual predator and that I planned to report him to the police. Looking back, I realized that was a mistake. His expression changed immediately, and he warned me that going to the police would be a very bad idea and could cause trouble for me. He claimed that he had been having an affair with his former assistant for a while, and the disgusting sperm and food situation was a game between them. He said the bet was that he could get her to eat his sperm before he left the job, and the pictures were supposed to be proof. According to him, she knew about all of it, and it was just part of their kink. The other photos, the ones of her body, were supposedly taken with her knowledge. He insisted that nothing illegal had occurred and that going to the police would be a mistake, implying I'd be the one in trouble for making false accusations. He didn't stop there. He said no one would believe me, that it would be seen as the revenge of a scorned wife. And to top it all off, he reminded me that he personally knows the chief prosecutor. He threatened that if I went to the police, I'd only embarrass myself and might even end up committing a crime by accusing him without evidence. At that point, I was too shaken to think clearly. My emotions got the best of me. I lost control and told him to leave the house. Things escalated, but in the end, he actually left. Afterward, I didn't feel comfortable staying there alone, so I packed more clothes and went back to my sister's place. I'm planning to stay there for at least a week, and I called in sick at work today. I'm not naive. I know he's trying to protect himself, his career, and his reputation. He's a lawyer, after all, and I have no doubt that he's crafting a defense to save face. He knows our marriage is over. I've always been firm and clear about my boundaries in relationships, and he's aware that there's no coming back from this. But a part of me wonders if there's any truth in his claim. Could it really have been consensual? Either way, I need to consult a lawyer, both for advice on divorce and to see if there's any legal action I should be taking. I couldn't wait. I had to call her. We're meeting in 2 hours at a cafe near her office. She sounded surprised but not overly concerned, which only deepens the mystery. For context, we've met a few times when I visited him at work, and we've exchanged pleasantries before, so I'm not a stranger to her. I've already transferred some of the photos to my phone to show her. This whole thing feels surreal, but I need answers. If I don't confront her now, the weight of uncertainty will be too much to bear until I meet with my lawyer next week. When she arrived, it was clear from her expression that she had no idea why I had asked her to meet. Her calm demeanor made me believe she was genuinely unaware of the situation. The first thing I asked was whether he had contacted her in the past few days. She said no, and her calmness made me think she was telling the truth. She's 22, and she seemed too composed to be lying to my face. I then explained that I had found deeply disturbing and inappropriate photos of her on his phone. I showed her a few of the less graphic pictures on my phone, and her reaction was immediate and intense. She was visibly upset, which confirmed my suspicion that she had no idea about the more shocking content I had discovered. I asked her about their relationship and his behavior. She initially said that everything was normal and that he was generally polite. However, she mentioned that towards the end of his tenure, he had started approaching her more frequently, discussing personal topics like her relationship status. He even fabricated a scenario where he claimed he would ask her out if he weren't married. When she said she would decline because she preferred to keep work and personal life separate, he pressed her to change her mind, which left her feeling uncomfortable. I felt ashamed of his behavior and apologized on his behalf. Then I had to tell her about the most shocking part, the photos of him ejaculating into food and her eating it. I hadn't planned to show her these pictures, but she insisted. When I revealed them, she was visibly horrified and nearly threw up. It was heartbreaking to see her in such distress. I sat beside her, held her hand, and reassured her that I would support her in whatever steps she decided to take. I told her that I had already left the house and planned to divorce him. I cried as I saw the pain and shock she was experiencing. I offered to accompany her home, but she declined, saying she would drive herself. She mentioned she would talk to her family and consider reporting him and filing a lawsuit, I feel immense sorrow for her and anger towards him. The situation feels like a nightmare that I can't wake up from. I hope that reaching out to her was the right thing to do. The day after meeting her, it seemed she took swift action. She must have gone to the police and reported him because, 2 days later, I received a call from an officer asking me to come to the station and bring the photos I had copied. I complied and handed over the images, though I kept a backup for myself. The officer asked if I wanted to testify, explaining that, since he was my husband, it wasn't mandatory. I agreed to share everything I knew, how I discovered the photos, how I reached out to her, and the details of our conversations. The very next day, the police called again, asking if I was at home. A few hours later, 4 officers, my husband, and a prosecutor arrived at our house. My husband handed over all electronic devices, hard drives, old phones, USB drives, and so on. They also conducted a thorough search of the house for any hidden devices, but, as far as I know, they didn't find anything. During this time, my husband mentioned he was staying in a hotel and said he would return later to collect some clothes and personal items. He asked if it was okay for him to do so, and I agreed, though I made it clear that I wouldn't be there. He said he wanted to talk, but would not pressure me, offering me space and time. He insisted that he loved me and claimed that the situation was more complicated than it appeared, just a matter of things getting out of hand. I struggled to hold back my anger. I wanted to lash out, to scream or even punch him, but I remained silent, knowing it was probably for the best. When I returned home that afternoon, his keys were left on the table next to an email from a craftsman who would be coming in a few days to fix the garage door. Since then, I've been alone in the house, and so far, nothing has happened. To be honest, I canceled my scheduled appointment with a divorce lawyer. It's not that I believe everything will miraculously resolve, but the emotional weight has been overwhelming. I need to regain my strength before proceeding with such a major step. My husband hasn't reached out to me at all. Despite being in constant touch with my sister, I feel incredibly lonely and somewhat depressed. The recent thunderstorms have only added to my unease. As for the discussion about where I'm from, it was amusing to see the interest. For those wondering, I'm from Germany. And to one lucky person, you've won a wash machine. I understand that many of you might be disappointed with the outcome, and that's okay. It's been an incredibly tough period filled with intense emotions, arguments, tears, and sleepless nights. Despite everything, he is my husband, and I am his wife, through both the good times and the bad. After much deliberation, we've decided to give our marriage another chance. I won't delve into every detail that led to this decision, but it was not made lightly. We've had deep, honest conversations where he opened up, took care of my feelings, and didn't pressure me. He acknowledges his wrongdoing, and while I understand the gravity of his actions, placing all the blame solely on him wouldn't be entirely fair. The woman involved, who I initially thought was innocent, played a significant role in this situation. She knew exactly how to appeal to his preferences and used that knowledge to her advantage. It's crucial to note that this isn't about victim blaming. She played a part in the dynamics that led to this. Yes, he was wrong, but so was she. I can't overlook that she must have been flirtatious and manipulative, knowing what she was doing. While I understand that many might see my decision as a sign of weakness or accuse me of being gaslight, this is my life and my marriage. I have to navigate it in the way that feels right for me. Regarding the legal proceedings, he reached a deal and paid a fine, which will be donated to charity. There were no court proceedings, and she hasn't pursued legal action, which I interpret as a significant factor in the situation. I want to share a bit more about why I made this decision. I married him knowing about his kinks and fetishes. I was aware of his attraction to certain physical traits and styles, which she happened to embody: big breasts, a curvy figure, glamorous makeup, and so on. She fit the archetype he finds appealing, and she was aware of how to leverage this to her advantage. I can understand how her presence and appearance might have triggered him. At her age, I knew how to influence men too, and I can recognize the dynamics at play. Ultimately, he made a mistake by not discussing his needs and feelings with me, opting instead for a misguided escape. He should have communicated with me, as we could have worked through it together. This wasn't about being prude or religious, but about understanding how certain dynamics can be incredibly tempting. Men in their 30s can be just as vulnerable as teenagers when it comes to sexual triggers, and this combination proved toxic. Second story. 7 years ago, during my master's degree, I met the woman who is now my wife. She was a foreign student, and we lived in the same student accommodation. We clicked almost immediately. It didn't take long before we started dating. A year or two into the relationship, she decided to stay in the country, and we moved in together. I love this woman more than anything. Things were going smoothly between us, but as time went on, she began to bring up the topic of marriage. Coming from a traditional family, she made it clear that if we were going to continue our relationship, Marriage was a must. She said that without it, her family wouldn't approve, and we wouldn't be able to build a life together. Now, I wasn't so keen on the idea of getting married again, but this woman had a way of convincing me. I had never been able to say no to her. She could charm me into doing almost anything, and this time was no different. I finally agreed. Even though deep down, I knew I had a huge secret I had been hiding from her. The problem was, I was technically still married to my ex-wife. Years ago, our relationship had ended badly. When things fell apart, I left without looking back. There was no closure, no final conversation, and definitely no divorce. I simply cut her off, changed my number, deleted all contact information, and went on with my life as if she didn't exist. I had been avoiding the situation for so long, pretending like it didn't matter, but now it was catching up to me. I never told my current wife about it. Since she's from another country and didn't know the marriage laws here, I figured I could handle everything without her knowing the truth. So, when we started planning the wedding, I told her I'd take care of the legal side while she focused on organizing the ceremony. Of course, she had questions. Why didn't she need to sign anything? Why didn't she have to show any ID? I brushed it off, telling her that the legal requirements were different where we lived and that I had everything under control. She trusted me, no doubt thinking I was handling everything like a responsible husband-to-be. The wedding itself was beautiful. It should have been one of the happiest days of my life. The guests were smiling, the setting was perfect, and everyone was there to celebrate us. But while she was glowing with happiness, I was sweating bullets. The whole event was built on a lie, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone would figure it out. Only a few people knew the truth, and that was the wedding staff. I had told them we were already legally married, and this was just a reception for friends and family now that we could afford it. Thankfully, no one questioned it. Fast forward to today, and we've been married for almost 3 years. She still has no idea that the marriage isn't real. And for a while, I started to believe that I had pulled off the impossible. I thought I could live this life forever. But life has a funny way of catching up with you when you least expect it. Last week, out of the blue, my actual wife, my ex, found me. I don't know how, but she managed to track me down. Apparently, a mutual friend of ours had told her about my remarriage, and she got my contact information through them. She was furious, and rightfully so. She called me every name under the sun and said she was going to make sure my wife found out about everything. I begged her not to. I even offered to finally go through with the divorce, but she told me it was too late. She wanted revenge, and nothing I could say would change her mind. Since that day, I've been living in constant anxiety. I can't sleep, I can't focus, and my mind is racing with thoughts of how to fix this mess. The thought of telling my wife the truth is unbearable. I know without a doubt that if she found out, she would leave me. There's no question about it. She's the type of person who values honesty and loyalty above everything else, and this betrayal would break her. So here I am, stuck between two impossible choices. I'm terrified that at any moment, my ex-wife will spill everything, and my world will come crashing down. I've been racking my brain for a way out, but no matter how I look at it, I'm trapped. The lie I built has grown too big, and now it's threatening to destroy everything I hold dear. All I can do is wait, hoping for a miracle, but deep down, I know the clock is ticking. The last few days have been nothing short of a nightmare, and it seems like everything I feared has come crashing down. I wanted to believe there was a way out of this mess, but as it turns out, you all were right. My ex-wife did exactly what she threatened. She told my wife about the fake marriage, and my world has completely fallen apart. My now ex-wife lost it, understandably so. She was furious beyond belief, and she accused me of treating her like some kind of mistress, just to keep 2 women in my life. I tried explaining that it wasn't true, but she wasn't interested in hearing any excuses. To her, it was the ultimate betrayal. She stormed out of the house, leaving me behind in the wreckage. Since then, she's been staying with a friend, and the only contact I've had with her has been through that same friend. It's like she's erased me from her life, and in some ways, I can't blame her, but that wasn't the worst part. She told everyone, our friends, my family, even my employer, about what happened. It was like she wanted to make sure I had nowhere to hide. As you might expect, they all took her side, and now I've been completely shut out. My friends don't want to speak to me, my family has disowned me, and to top it off, I was fired from my job. My dad called me last night and told me that I was no longer welcome in his house, and that I shouldn't even think about contacting anyone in the family again. I feel completely alone, with no support system left. On top of everything else, I'm worried about how I'm going to pay rent now that I've lost my job. My wife had been helping out financially, but with her gone, I'm not sure how I'll manage. Then there's the immigration issue, which I didn't fully grasp until now. A lot of you pointed it out, and I regret not thinking about it sooner. My wife was here on a work visa, or so I thought. As it turns out, her work visa expired a while ago, but she didn't worry because she believed our marriage would protect her. Now that she knows our marriage is a sham, she's in deep trouble with immigration, apparently, after contacting the Home Office. She was told that unless she voluntarily leaves the country, she could be detained. Even worse, if she's deported, she could face a ban from entering the country for anywhere from 2 to 5 years. I can't even begin to describe the guilt I feel knowing that my lies put her in this situation. As for her family, I don't know how they've taken the news. According to the friend she's staying with, her family isn't pleased with her either, and they may not even take her back. She's stuck in a horrible situation because of me, and it feels like both of our lives have imploded. I know I'm to blame for all of this, and I don't know how to make things right. Every step I took in the past few years has led me here, and I can't help but feel like I've ruined not just my life, but hers as well. I never meant for any of this to happen, but intentions don't change the outcome. Now, I'm left to figure out what to do next if there's even a path forward from here. It's hard to imagine a way out of this mess when everything has already crumbled to the ground. Third story. I had 3 close guy friends, and at one point, I'd had with all of them, including some group encounters. This was years ago, and now 2 of them are in serious relationships with 2 of my best friends, who are aware of our past. My current boyfriend, whom I've been with for about a year, knows about this history. He's a bit insecure since I'm his first, but I've always reassured him that it's in the past, and I'm only focused on him. To make things easier, I even asked my guy friends to never bring up what happened between us. The other night, we all hung out together, and I stepped out with one of the guys to grab a few things. When we returned, my boyfriend seemed off. He tried to play it cool, but I could tell something was bothering him. Later at my place, I pressed him to talk, and he finally told me what happened. My guy friends had been making inappropriate Eskimo brother jokes, saying he got leftovers and teasing him about being able to satisfy me the same way they couldn't. I was furious. I confronted my friends, but they brushed it off, saying they were just trying to toughen him up since I had mentioned his insecurities before. My boyfriend, trying to act like it didn't bother him, kept saying the past was the past, but I knew their words had hurt him deeply. I made the decision to cut off my guy friends, not just because they disrespected my boyfriend, but because they disrespected me by calling me leftovers. My 2 best friends think I'm overreacting, but I couldn't let that kind of insult slide. Since then, I've been trying to make things right with my boyfriend, but he's been distant, and even when I tried to show him how much I care by initiating intimacy, he wasn't in the mood. After everything that happened, my boyfriend told me he was glad I cut ties with my former friends. While he wouldn't have asked me to do it himself, he admitted that if I hadn't, he would have left. He reassured me that he didn't want to break up over this, especially since I hadn't done anything wrong, and he understands that everyone has a past. But when my ex-friends opened their mouths, it became too real for him. He was also upset with me for sharing his insecurities with them, which I know was a huge mistake. I apologized sincerely and promised never to do it again. Despite understanding the situation, he said he feels inadequate and wonders how he's supposed to compare, especially since he's just one guy. I assured him that he's far better than any of them, and that he's all I want now. We talked for a long time and eventually hugged it out, but he told me he wasn't ready for sex yet and asked me to respect that, which I completely agreed to. He also set a boundary about not wanting to hang out with any former partners, and I fully support that after what happened. He said he wouldn't make a scene if we ran into one at a party or something, but he's not comfortable spending time with them. One of my best friends later reached out to apologize. She had thought my former friends just mentioned our history and my boyfriend got insecure, but she didn't realize how horrible they were. She even broke up with one of them after hearing everything. I haven't heard from the other friend. I feel disgusted that I ever let those guys touch me, and I deeply regret betraying my boyfriend's trust by sharing his insecurities with them. I know I messed up by trusting the wrong people, but some of the comments I've received shaming me for my sexual past were just awful. I take full responsibility for my mistakes, but having a sexual past didn't hurt anyone. What hurt was trusting the wrong people to be my friends. Thankfully, things with my boyfriend are back on track. He's returned to his old self, loving, sweet, and affectionate. I've been showing him how much I care by being attentive and respectful of his boundaries. I've been cooking his favorite meals, giving him small gifts, and making sure he knows how much I appreciate him. We had a deep conversation about boundaries and everything that happened, and he forgave me for telling my ex-friends about his insecurities. I promised him I'd never make that mistake again. We also had a serious talk about his insecurities. He knows about everything I've shared online, but he's okay with it since no one knows who we are. After I reassured him that he's the best I've ever had and that I only want him, his confidence came back, and he wasn't shy about showing it. As for my former friends, they're completely out of my life. I've blocked them on all platforms and have no desire to see them ever again. While I know relationships will always have ups and downs, we've moved past this, and things feel stronger between us now. I've learned from my mistakes, and we're in a good place. My boyfriend is pretty inexperienced compared to me, but that's perfectly fine because he's still the best I've ever had. One of my friends, knowing about my past, asked if my boyfriend would be open to being with both of us so he could catch up to my experience. The suggestion caught me off guard, and I wasn't sure how to respond. Thankfully, my boyfriend said no. To be honest, it might sound selfish, but I want him all to myself. I was really upset that my friend even brought this up. To give a little context, my friend and I have shared partners before, so I guess she thought it wasn't a big deal. After thinking it over, I decided to have a conversation with her. My boyfriend is fully aware of my past with her, so I didn't hide anything. I told her I didn't appreciate what she asked, especially since she hadn't talked to me about it first. She seemed genuinely confused and thought I'd be into the idea. I made it clear that I don't want to share my boyfriend at all, and even if I did, she should have asked me before approaching him. She was surprised and said, "Wow, you really love this guy, don't you?" Then she apologized and promised not to bring it up again, though she did mention that if my boyfriend and I ever change our minds, we should let her know. Later, I had a talk with my boyfriend about it. I asked him if he'd ever regret saying no to my friend. He was sweet and told me that as long as he has me, he doesn't want another woman. I told him I feel the same, I don't want to share him with anyone. He took it as a compliment, and we ended up having a really nice night together. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Red Relationships to never miss a future upload.